Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another one of my interviews. I'm going to be joined by a very special guest today. He is former, he is former WWE Wyatt family member one time during the Bray Wyatt and John Cena feud. He is an actor and comedian. He played in Nickelodeon's Casey Undercover as Petey. He played in Kevin Can Wait and much more movies and shows and everything else. He is the son of former WWF manager of the Bushwhackers, who I just recently interviewed, Jameson. He is no other than James DiGiacomo, also known as, and formerly known as, Little Johnny in the WWE. So I'm going to get him on in here, and then we will start.
Blake, what's up, man? Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, I can
Can you?
hear you.
Oh, great.
Can you
What's
hear
up,
me?
man? How you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Honestly, I'm excited for the interview. Like the stuff you do.
Yeah, me too. So I'll start off by asking my first question.
Sure.
When did you start doing acting and what made you want to do that?
So at the very young age of 3, my father, who was in the industry beforehand, noticed some interesting personality traits and that I had a more emotional and expressive personality. And he very quickly realized that this kid can, you know, do something out there. He can really make a scene. And, you know, lo and behold, he went to the city. He brought me into the city and brought me to this acting class that only took 5 to 10 year olds. And I was 3, and they managed to take me. And so they took me in, and that night I got signed with a manager and at 3, and I've been signed with her ever since. So it's been a pretty long time, and it's crazy to think about. It's almost, I think, 15 years, just about. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Mm-hmm. Definitely starting at that young age. A lot of kids' dreams.
Yeah, me myself, which is interesting, was, you know, I, I walked in. Me and my dad walked in, and I was, as I said, very young, 3, and so you'd expect me to be nervous and to be, you know, yeah, nervous and just about that. And we go in, and I'm one of the only kids that actually has the comfortability to answer their questions, and to give them good feedback rather than be nervous and not know what to do with myself and all that. So, that was one thing that stood out early on, that I had that maturity to know.
Yeah, for sure. What was your favorite show as a kid that got you hooked into wanting to act? And who was your favorite actor?
Um, that's a good question. I'd have to really think about that one. If I had to shoot one out, because I was, when I was really young, I was, 7, 8, 9. My big one was SpongeBob. I had a really goofy sense of humor as a kid, and so
Yeah.
that was definitely one that I always wanted to get onto some voiceover and, do something for a cartoon show. I never really got the chance, but it's always, a possibility.
Yeah, you never know. Who is your favorite actor nowadays?
Oh, nowadays, that's another good question. It's probably a mix up. A few of my in terms of comedy, Ryan Reynolds is one of my favorites out there right now. Um, but man, that's a really good question. somebody that I've always really wanted to work with was Kevin James from an early age. And so
Yeah.
when I managed to work with him for Kevin Can Wait, that was incredible. That was
Hmm.
always one that was, a big one for me.
Yeah. Who were your acting trainers? Like, who helped you?
So since forever, I've actually only ever been in one acting class, which was the one that day that I got signed with my manager. But other than that, my father has been my acting coach since day one. I've done everything with him. Every audition, we'd sit, work on it together, and it's one of those things where we haven't really needed to go to any outside sources. It's just been the two of us.
Yeah. Were you ever, was there any type of drama class that you were in as a kid, or like any musicals? Did you do musicals or plays as a kid too?
So as a younger kid, I never really was too interested in theater, but as I grew up, my dad, exposed me to some of the because he, back in his day would write plays, and he wrote a play that went off Broadway, which is pretty cool, and some of the stuff that he's done is really interesting. So to have him take me back into that world was really really cool, and I haven't personally, stepped into that, but to know that he has that in his history is really, really cool, and I'm glad to kind of be a part of it.
Yeah, it would be cool if definitely because you had somebody as a family figure to help you with your acting career. What do you consider to be your weakness in acting?
Hmm. Everybody has a lot of weaknesses. That's one thing. So it's hard to pinpoint something that's key. But I think one thing that's hurt me as of recently is my physical change. So over the past three three-ish years, like since the pandemic started, I've lost a lot of weight and physically changed a lot. So that has done a lot for what they call typecasting, where a casting director has a certain role and they got to find kids for that role. And if that role is certain descriptive of, you know, a short, fat, funny kid, that's what they're going to look for. That's what they're going to grab. And when they see me, that's something that they see instantly. So it was one quick little, um, advantage, so to speak, that I had early on that, when they would see me, they would say, what's this about? And then when they would watch it, they would realize, oh, this kid could really play the character. And, that was really helpful early on. So as of recently, since the pandemic, I've lost a lot of weight and physically changed. So I don't really fit those roles anymore. I'm gonna have to kind of reintroduce myself in a sense.
Hmm. What about what do you consider to be a strength in acting?
I think my range. I think one thing, and one thing that I can be confident in is note taking notes. As an actor, you have to be able to take notes from a director, from a writer. The piece of work that you're doing has a lot of heart and passion put into it. And so if you don't respect that and, have the ability to adapt to what the people that created it want to see, then you won't really make it very far in terms of, some of these bigger projects where these big names that are working on it sit there and say, I don't really want to do this. And then the people that wrote it say, no, it's how it's supposed to be written. It's how it's supposed to be read. So, those kinds of conflicts that people can sometimes have when, they're faced with certain things that they don't either understand or that they can't adapt to, like a comedic change, delivering a line, a different way, a physical change, anything like that. To be able to adapt to that is pretty important. And from a young age, I was able to do that, which is important because kids specifically don't have that sort of direct ability to change and adapt. That's something that comes along later. And so I had that
Mhm.
early on, and that was something that they caught and they really enjoyed.
Yeah, for sure. What was the hardest thing about acting? Like you had to set aside during your acting career. What was the hardest thing?
Well, in terms of sacrifice, actors go through very different lives. Everybody's different for how much work they do, how much they travel. As an actor who is based in New York, I could potentially do a lot of work just in New York and not have to travel for it. Whereas there are people that could live in Florida or that could live in, Canada, let's say. And there's a lot of work in, Vancouver. There's a lot of work in, Georgia, like Atlanta, Georgia, and California,
Mhm.
of course, not just New York, but as somebody that lives in New York, there are plenty of jobs where you wouldn't really have to travel, so to speak. Um, but I will say one thing that I've had to sacrifice is, the time spent at home. So in terms of when I did, and I'll say this, and don't worry about it because it is a common misconception, but it was
Yeah.
Disney, not Nickelodeon, the Casey and
Oh,
Recover,
okay.
which definitely just a common misconception. It's an older show, so it makes sense. But when I had to do Disney, they shot that in California. And so I was back and forth and back and forth because I wasn't contracted to live out there. I was just contracted to do episodes. And so, as somebody that lives in New York, I would have to take a flight from New York to California, back home, and then do that repeatedly. And so I would miss school. I would miss, I missed a couple of my sister's birthdays. I missed a Thanksgiving. So there's some things that you're gonna have to sacrifice here and there, but it's inevitably a passion, and it's something that I want to be doing and spending my time on. So you have to understand that there are a few things that you're gonna have to sacrifice here and there. And my family supports me, so my sister wasn't too bummed and all that stuff. So we're all good,
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do.
of course.
What was the first show you took part in, and how did it feel getting to be part of that first show or movie?
That's a good question. Now, it's funny that I can really even remember much of this because I was 5 when I did it. But my first actual TV job was an older show called White Collar. And that show, I played the main character, or one of the main characters, as a younger kid. And so the premise of the episode was he was getting bullied. Those were the flashbacks that they were looking back at. And so, as somebody that is smaller in stature for sure, and definitely understands the concept of bullying or understood it at that age, I was definitely in a situation of, wow, this could really happen to me someday, where I could get
Mhm.
shoved around and picked on because I was young, I was 5, but I was at that point where I was getting thrown around at a playground, and it was an eye-opening thing for me to say, you know what, this could be real, and it's one of those things where it makes you proud of, at that very young age, I was able to be proud of, wow, I'm doing something that is real. It's not fake, because that's everything that you are experiencing at that young age that you're watching on TV is cartoons and all this fake stuff. So to be part of something like that was real at that young age definitely felt nice, and it was my first ever big set, and yeah, it was a really nice experience, and I'm glad that I do actually remember some of it because it was so long ago.
Yeah. When when you were in school during back then and now, I'm guessing, right?
Right? Yeah, I'm a freshman in college right now.
All right. And then when you were in school, how did the kids act? Because they were like, you were famous to them, and how did they
Right,
act
right.
when?
So it's actually interesting. One thing to take into account is the time span of those types of emotions, right? As those kids grew up with me, those feelings kind of dissipated, and it became more of, yeah, this is just James. It's just a normal guy. He's just like us, which was very nice to have, as I was going through elementary school and middle school, I had a lot of friends that were able to put aside the acting thing. There are obviously, as your question asked, kids that can be a little more questionable in terms of negativity or positivity. There are people that could definitely have picked on me. I've been picked on for sure for the acting stuff, but as for the people that care for it and are fans, so to speak, I don't really like using terms like that, but for people like that, they have a lot of enjoyment in it, and I obviously have a passion for acting, and so to be able to express it to them and all of that, I answer every question I'm asked. It's very interesting for me to be able to share it with them for sure. So at that young age, there were definitely you know a decent amount of kids that were like, "Hey, you're the kid from this," and they would call me PD and all of this, but definitely drifted off after time.
Yeah. If you could go back in time and do an acting role with any actor who passed away, who would that be?
It's a really good question. That would be Robin Williams, I think.
Mm,
That's a really
yeah.
good question. Actually, because I'll be honest, I haven't thought about this much, but he is definitely somebody that I looked up to at a younger age in terms of comedy, and he was just incredible. And too early, and one of those things where you just wish things were different. But I will say that that is definitely somebody that would have been a blessing to work with.
Yeah. I would have loved to see that. Who would you top as three of your favorite actors in your acting career?
Wow. That I've worked with. I would have to put. Wow. I'm gonna say surface level. I will say Zendaya was incredible because, as starstruck as she knew some of the people could be around her, she treated them with all due respect, and everybody felt like family when they were in her presence, which was very, very nice. As somebody who definitely, the first time she ever walked into a room when I was there, I was like, wow, this is
Yeah.
crazy. And again, this is before she was even, the star she is today. Her career has just gone like this. And so at a point that it was at then, to think about where it could have been now, if I was at that age and she were to walk into the room then, I would be even more out of my mind. So, she's just definitely somebody to pay respects to in terms of how well she is with her fans and with the people that she works with. Um, it's hard. That question's really good because there's a lot of people and there's a lot of different reasons why they were good people to work with. Um, I got the chance to not work with, but meet and spend some time with Cameron Boyce, who, when he did
Ooh.
Bunked, was doing a lot of stuff around the sets because they shot Bunked in the same area of the sets as they shot Case Undercover. So there was, and like Liv and Maddie as well. So there were times where I would be going to lunch and then he would stop by and I would freak out. And it would be one of those things where we became kind of buddy buddy, and he brought me to the Bunked um, set and showed me around, which was really cool. He was doing a bunch of um, like boxing stuff, I think, and there were a few other people that were giving me a tour, which was cool. Like, not really like the actors, more so people that were working there that were taking part and like showing me around. But it was really cool for him to be there and to treat me like buddy buddy, which was cool. But in terms of people that I've worked with, it's really interesting. A lot of people are those stereotypes that you hear, they're not as common as you would think. Those divas and those people that the ego and the humble people out there. It's almost a needle in a haystack to find somebody that's really a bad apple, because in this industry you have to really have some heart, and you have to have some passion, and you have to know how to work with people. You have to be able to operate with people. And, as somebody who has been in the industry since I'm very, very young, I definitely understand that these big names all have a sense of work ethic, but they also have a sense of, I really want to spend my time with these people that, look up to me in a sense. And so it was really nice to spend time with just about if I'm thinking about Kevin Can Wait, when I met Kevin James, that was incredible. And then every single big, I met Adam Sandler, which was incredible. And, all of those guys that I managed to meet through Kevin James and through that show, they were all just incredible people that really knew how to, you know,
Yeah.
be social, and they weren't just work, crazy, acting, all this stuff. They knew how to be people. And it was really nice to feel that.
Yeah. Definitely. Out of all the shows you've got to take part of, shows or movies you've got to take part of, which one would you list as your top favorite?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think I think my favorite has to be Rockaway. It's a film that I did with five other boys, and the six of us became best friends throughout the whole shoot. And plenty of us are still friends to this day. We've all moved around, so it's not easy to stay in contact, so to speak. But the
Yeah.
ones that are still around, we definitely stay in contact, and it's really nice to have that family relationship. I'm looking off because I'm actually looking at a poster that a cut off of a Rockaway poster that I have on my desk. So it's nice to have those memories. That was definitely one of my favorite things that I've ever worked on, and the film is incredible. I have to say, it brings me to tears just about every time I watch it.
Yeah. How did Nickel or Disney, sorry, how did Disney scout you out and ask you to be part of their show Casey Undercover? And what was your reaction to Disney asking you to take part?
Well, as the timeline has it, I filmed a movie called Brooklyn, which, and I could, somebody could correct me, that somebody being my father, but I believe that I shot the movie Brooklyn, that came out, did decently well, and then the casting directors saw that film and a couple other things like the NFL commercial I had done a very long time ago, and it was a sense of, we see who he is, we kind of want to see what he can do for us. And so they pulled me and had me audition with the rest of the group, which I'm sure they did that for a bunch of other kids, where they, would see this kid on this and they would say, let's audition him. And so they pulled all of us together, and I was the one that managed to win them over. And so to be the one that, auditioned and got the call back and, booked it, it felt incredible. And I was actually able to get really close with the casting director, which was nice.
Yeah, that would be awesome to get a call like that at such a young age to
Right.
act for something big like that. Who from Casey Undercover was your favorite actor to work with, and who did you hang around with and talk with the most when you got times to?
Mm, that's a good question. It was so long ago, I have to rack my brain for what I spent most of my time, because realistically, I spent a lot of my time doing school while I was shooting with them. I had to, as a child actor who is doing public schooling, I have to have 3 hours. I believe it's like 15 hours a week. That was the law at the time. I don't know how much it's changed. I haven't actually done schooling on a job in a pretty long time, but I believe it's about 15 hours a week, depending on how long you're shooting. If it is a week, but it's something like 3 hours a day for 5 days, and like to fit it in that week, but 3 hours a day, something like that.
Yeah.
I would have to be in a room, this like tutoring room, beautiful room. It's funny, the tutor that they had was this wonderful woman, and haven't seen her since we shot, so it was one of those things where kind of just lost touch. But she she was one of the buddy people that I spent a lot of time with. That tutor, and Trinity, um, Judy, developed like Judy, was in that room with me quite a lot too, doing her schooling. So it was nice to be able to hang out with her. But in terms of the cast that I was really blessed to meet, Florence, late Florence Henderson, she was incredible. And then like Alfonso Ribeiro directed an episode,
Hmm.
called him, Fresh Prince of Bel Air, which was awesome to meet him because I was a big fan of Fresh Prince of Bel Air as a young kid. Um, but yeah, that show definitely introduced me to a lot of great people, and I will say, being in that schoolroom early on when Zendaya was still doing her, I believe it was high school. It could have been high school or college. I don't really remember, but it was for a few months that she was in that room with us, and it was surreal to just know that I was doing school with Zendaya. It was just like, what? That's crazy. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. How does it feel for you to know that you are living a dream of a lot of kids have, to be an actor at such a young age? And so,
Absolutely blessed. Honestly, I'm so grateful to have the people around me that I do that support what I do. My father is almost, it's not, he's 99% of who I have to thank for my career. And, I wouldn't be anywhere without him. But I will say, Ingrid, my manager, is definitely a big part of that. She's helped so much. And, it's one of those things where you understand that your life could have been so different, and to know that where you are right now is where you wanted to be, and where you would want to be if you weren't there, you feel
mhm,
complete, and you feel calm, and you feel confident in yourself and where you want to be. And for me, that's to be an actor. And I'm very excited for what the future holds. That the writer's strike is over. There was a big writer's strike in the union. I'm part of that, so to know that that's over and I'm going to see a lot more work flooding in, that'll be really nice. So,
yeah. When was the last time you acted in any films, movies, and shows?
the last thing that I did was, I believe, Rockaway, or wait, it's called I'm on Fire. I can pull up to get the right date. It was, yeah, it was December of 2019.
Oh
I
wow.
shot uh, that film, and it was the last, like, it was the last real memorable thing that I got out there. And I have to say, it was really nice to see the final product. And the director, who's Australian, I believe he is back in Australia right now, is just an incredible guy. He knew exactly what he was doing. He shot it on 50 milliliter or 70 millimeter. I don't remember. I think it was 50 millimeter, but just a really authentic, beautiful camera lens, um, fog for the atmosphere, and just really knew how to set the scene for the time frame that he was going for. And so the movie came out great. It was a short film, and it went off to Toronto actually, which was great, and a few other festivals. But yeah, that was the last. That was the last thing, pretty much.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that shifted away because of the COVID and the pandemic. You didn't get to do much
Right.
acting.
Yeah, so once the pandemic hit, it went from, a few auditions a week, or, if you want to look at it like this, it was maybe, 10, 15 a month, to one, two a month, two or three every 6 months, to
Oh wow.
now, like, it's been maybe two in the last year, two
Wow.
or three. It's just been very, very, very little. And it's one of those things where you see that there's a fluctuation to these things. I've always said the industry is very 50-50. It's unforgiving. You can't expect to make all of your money off of it. You can't live off of it unless you are Zendaya or Kevin James. You know what I mean? So it's one of those
Yeah.
things where I'm very blessed to understand that I'm a kid. I was blessed to be part of what I was part of, but the pandemic as well as the writer's strike over the recent year has shown me that this grace period is important because it gives me time to learn about myself, learn about my own passions outside of acting. And, school has been great for me to just be a kid and enjoy my time with my friends. My senior year of high school was fantastic, and I wouldn't have traded that for anything. I think if I were to run back and think of any audition I could have done, any job I could have done, I wouldn't have had another senior year. That was it. So to have that and to have my senior summer with my friends and enjoy that was pretty much everything for me. So this grace period to grow into myself and to learn about myself has gotten me really ready for the future, and I'm really excited for what jobs are to come.
Yeah. Now shifting into the WWE, how did you get the role to be part of the little Johnny and with Bray Wyatt and John Cena, and how did that all come about?
So it's actually interesting how this happened. My agency that I was and with CESD, they got a call, and the call was from WWE, and basically, in short, they asked them to send their best kid, their best 8 to 10 year old. No audition process, no callback process, just pick your best 8 to 10 year old that you represent and send it to us. And they picked me, and I went, and I ended up, you know, we made it to the arena, and I don't want to spoil any backstage. Um, you know, there's some real interesting things that happen backstage. It's really nice to see, as a kid, all these guys that are going at each other's necks, in a sense. To see them as people, it was really, really interesting, especially at that young age when I didn't really fully understand everything. To be exposed to it that way was really, really, really interesting. I wouldn't have traded that for anything either. And to meet, Vince McMahon and Bray Wyatt and, the rest of the Wyatt brothers, John Cena, it was really incredible. And I got to meet plenty of other, throughout the night, which was really a blessing.
Yeah, definitely. So when you were a kid, were you, and now, are you ever a big fan of wrestling? And did you ever get into it much?
Personally, in all honesty, I haven't been the biggest, indulgent fan, so to speak. I don't spend time watching it, but one thing that I will say is I'm so blessed to be a part of the universe. I love what my dad did back in the day, seeing all that, and I'm definitely aware. I understand what goes on, and I know some of the current things that are going on. But I will say with confidence, I don't spend time watching just because it's not something that I have much of a passion for that I grew into
Yeah.
as a kid. When I was a kid, I wasn't watching that. I was watching other stuff. But to have
Mhm.
learned about it when I became part of it, I fell in love with it immediately.
Yeah. Who who was your favorite wrestler that you got to hang out with and talk with backstage during your time there?
I think most memorably, I got to spend some time with. It's interesting to think because on the day, when we were eating lunch and everything, there were a decent amount of them that were around. And as that young kid, I couldn't not go around trying to get some autographs. So to be able to, go introduce myself and say, hey, I'm doing this and that, and I love what you do, blah blah blah. It felt really good to be able to experience that. So, I will say I didn't spend ex- time exclusively with one person backstage, but I will say everybody was absolutely fantastic tonight.
Hmm. If you could have a dream wrestling match with anybody from the WWE, who would that be?
Listen, got to run it back with John Cena. Little Johnny,
Yeah,
back and better than ever. I got to take him down.
that would be so good. Seeing you, that needs to happen.
I think it would be really cool.
Hmm. And then have Jameson come back as like your manager,
Oh, that would
and
be fantastic.
yeah. Was there ever a thought while you were there, or ever now, that you think you would ever want to do and join wrestling?
I actually have thought about it. I will say I don't think it's in the cards anytime soon, but I will say with confidence, I love the industry. I love the fans. I really like the way they do things, and it is definitely something that if I were ever asked to be a part of, I would not say no for a second.
Yeah. Was there any nervousness at all getting to do this little Johnny segment? Because from acting, it's different because you in the WWE you were in front of this big crowd, and so was there any nervousness or anything going into this?
100 million bajillion percent, man. It was crazy. I don't know if you know how some of this happens sometimes, but I was under the ring the whole time. So I, as that little tiny kid, was under this big, massive ring while boom, 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 there's just massive guys hitting the floor. Scary stuff. Meanwhile, I'm sitting down there, and there was this little box TV that I was watching the match out of. And beforehand, they ran me through some of the stuff that was going to happen. And so when we did, I kind of knew what was going on. But when it happened, and man, the lights cut, the music played. I went out from under the ring, right onto the stairs, and from there it was just like, boom, everybody was there in front of me. John Cena face to face. Just, man, it was one of the craziest nights of my life for sure.
Yeah. What was your reaction when you heard the news of the sad and shocking passing of Bray Wyatt?
Yeah, I was devastated, honestly. Personally, I will say it's hard to know that that it's even a thing that you have to worry about is that these people aren't here forever. And this industry is so incredible, and it has some really incredible wrestlers. And to see where some of them were, where they used to be, and to see where the state that some of them are in now, it's a shame. And you'd want to hope that we could do everything to keep them in their spirits for how this industry is going. And you know, I'm devastated just about that. That's pretty much all you can say.
Yeah, because it was a big shock. It just randomly
Yeah,
came out. It was,
yeah, it was out of nowhere. Absolutely.
mhm. Was there ever a time when you were younger when you doubted yourself of becoming an actor, and then it actually happened or anything?
That's a great question. Now, I will say I never doubted myself because doubt is something that is I believe you almost can't ever truly get rid of it. If you doubt yourself once, you're gonna doubt yourself again. I think
Yeah.
confidence is really important. I will say I'm realistic, and to be somebody that is a realist, not too positive, not too negative about what goes on. I just try to understand the facts of the matter. As I said, it's a 50-50 industry. It's unforgiving, and you can't make all the money on it. So I had to understand that even if I did do what I was doing for the rest of my life, I might not be able to live off of it. And so it was a reality check at a young age to be able to say, I can't do this forever. I have to understand that, if I want a stable life and, you know, at the industry as it is, it's not inevitable that I'll book a job. I'm not 100%
Yeah.
going to keep working. So it's one of those things where you have to understand that. You have to be prepared for it. And I've been blessed with this grace period to be able to find myself and, outside of acting, so to speak, go to school and, keep going to school and college now. So it's one of those things where I'm definitely happy to be in the situation that I'm in and to think about the past and what could possibly happen in the future. I think everything's going pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Is there any time a fan has seen you in public and got super surprised and or excited?
Yes, I'll say not recently because of the physical changes and everything like that. I'm not somebody that you'll see on the street and say, "Hey, I think I've seen him somewhere before," because
Yeah.
physically my face has changed, my body's changed, so it's not something that you'll be able to just spot. But I will say through the years, I'll say 11, 12, I'd say even going to like 15, I was still a little bit more recognizable. It was around 15 that I started losing weight and my face was still a little pudgy. You could see the roundness. You still kind of see Petey in there, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was one of those things where I could get recognized off the street. There could be somebody that says, "Hey, is that Petey from K Center?" "Hey, are you blah blah blah?" And if I was at school or if I was going to a school event and there was somebody that I didn't know that had no idea that I was in the district or something like that, and one of my friends was like, "Hey, wait, you don't know this, but that's Petey," and then they say, "Wait, now I recognize him," and it's like one of those things where it's just those facial features that you kind of see. As a kid, it happens a lot more in daily life rather than just off the street.
Mm-hmm. If a movie was made about your career, who would you want to play you?
That's a great question. Wow. Um, I think only because I don't know where I'm going to be moving forward, I'll answer that with, I'll answer it as best as I can. I'm going to say I think Tom Holland, if he was younger, and a younger Tom Holland or like a younger, yeah, I think Tom Holland is just about what comes to mind. It's hard to put a name on that right now because I'm 18 and I don't really have an idea of what I'm going to be like when I'm 20, 30. But
Yeah.
I will say, knowing Tom Holland, what he looks like, his stature, his height, um, his acting capabilities is incredible. So I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
And I love Spider-Man too, so that would be sick.
Yeah. It would be great if to have Tom Holland do that. And I feel and see that the resemblance kind of so. What has been the funniest thing a fan has said to you before?
Ooh, I gotta rack my brain for that one. Um, I will say one thing that I ended up getting a lot at a younger age from younger fans because of Case Undercover was, "Is Judy really a robot?" And that one always got me because it was funny to realize, yeah, these kids are young and they don't really understand that, you know, it's fake. You know what I mean? It's not. It's not a.
Yeah.
It's those aren't real sparks coming out from under her head, or not real sparks popping out from her headless body. It's there's some fakeness to it, and that's what entertainment's about. It's an escape from reality.
Hmm. If you could have a wrestling match or a segment with any actor, who would that be?
Ooh, I think I want to go back and say Ryan Reynolds because I love what he does in Deadpool and Free Guy recently. All of the physicalities that he comes up with, it's really impressive. He's a really funny guy, and I think if I were to think about any WWE match that I could potentially have at my stature, it would have to be somebody like Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure he has like did guest things for the WWE too. So,
That would be really interesting.
what would you say has been a best fan compliment you've received either anywhere? I guess.
Hmm. I really, I will say, I really like when fans compliment anything smaller that I've done. If I've done anything like Case Undercover or Kevin Can Wait, that's bigger, and something like that, that's a bigger name. If somebody knows me really well and knows the work that I've done, and they pull out something like Rockaway, or I've heard Fresh Off the Boat a couple of times because that was a show that I had one small role in, but it was definitely recognizable. It stood out, and to have somebody say, "Saw you in Fresh Off the Boat. That was so funny. I thought it was really good." Those smaller jobs where there's people that I know that see me in it. It's nice to hear that instead of, "Hey, I saw you do this on Case Undercover. Can you scream Judy?" or something like that. You know.
All right.
Oh, hello.
Okay, we're back.
How
Okay.
long? What was the last thing you heard me say?
Oh, I heard everything. It just
Oh,
the
okay, good.
video went out. It usually does that sometimes when here
Got
and
it.
there. So, which actor has given you the best advice and or compliment?
I'll say in terms of compliment, it was absolutely incredible to meet Adam Sandler. I was completely starstruck. It was a night that we had finished filming Kevin Can Wait, and we were all walking off set, and Adam came up to me, and I didn't even recognize him because he had a full, bushy beard, long hair, and I don't know if you know what he looked like in Uncut Gems, but it was bushier than that, and he just didn't look like himself in a sense, and so I didn't
Yeah.
recognize him. And at that young age of being in the industry, if somebody comes up to you and starts talking to you professionally, you can you can just reciprocate and be mature enough to, um, without losing yourself, hold the conversation. So I was able to reciprocate for a second and hold the conversation until I realized that it was Adam Sandler. And I stopped and I was like, wait. And then that's when he realized now he gets it. And
Hmm.
he let me kind of fanboy for a second until he said, I really like what you did tonight. I really hope that we work together at some point. And there's oftentimes where an actor will say, "I want to work with you again." I would say to any aspiring actors out there, understand that if somebody wants to work with you, it might not happen. I at a young age, because I at a young age was told by Adam Sandler he'd want to work with me, and I was looking at the clock, looking at my watch, saying, "When's that day gonna come?" And it took me a while to realize he's a busy man, and if that day comes,
Hmm.
I'll fill a role. He might call me up, he might call my manager up, but as I said, it's a very 50-50 industry. There's nothing that is set in stone, and you have to be prepared for that. And if I cross paths with him again, fingers crossed that it's on a job and I'll be able to work with him. But yeah, I will say that was one moment that taught me a lot, but it was also really nice to be able to experience it with him.
Yeah, definitely. What has been the hardest role or moment that you had to do for like a scene
Mm,
in acting or show or movie?
there was a film that I shot. I'll give you two actually. The first one's funny. I did a commercial for Mitsubishi, the car brand, and it was, oh, I could have been 9, 10, something. I was young, but I remember vividly we were in the Keys in Miami or in Florida, sorry, and it was hot as hell. It was just maybe 80, 90 something. It was just hot. And the spot that we were doing for Mitsubishi, part of the commercial, we were supposed to be in Aspen, in the mountains, in the cold, snowy mountains, and we weren't. We were in the Keys in Florida, hot, humid, and so we were in snow gear, like hats, layers, and sitting in this hot car in the middle of the Keys with a few green screens around us for this car commercial. And it was
Yeah.
like, man, this is not what you'd expect. And, so that's one funny one that, that was pretty difficult. But I will say, in terms of personally, this was difficult. Looking back and understanding, where I was in my career at the ripe age of 7, I auditioned for, actually, it could have been 8. It was branching from the age 7 into 8, I believe. But I was very young and was challenged with an audition. I came home from school one day and my dad said to me, "Hey, bud, you got another audition. Listen, you don't have to do this one. If you're not comfortable with it, I understand, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Just tell me, Dad, what's up?" And he said, "You have to wear a dress." And I said, "Come on, Dad, I'll do anything. It's acting. It's my life. It's my job. I don't care what I have to do." And that, I remember, I know that was a big thing for him to hear from me at a young age, to be comfortable with that. But, moving forward, the role itself was a gender confused younger kid who had a single father who was homophobic. And so a very, you know, you know, for the times now, it would have been a great film, but it was a decent amount of years ago. But in the film, I had to cry. And at that age, to be able to cry on command was more difficult, very much so. And so I had to kind of pull it out of myself, get emotional, get really emotional. And so it was less of a fake cry, more of a real cry, um, in terms of forcing myself. So it was less of this is a skill and more of forcing the emotion and really just pushing it out of myself. And so that was definitely a difficult thing to get done on multiple takes. And in the cold, it was snowing at the time, so I'm dealing with a lot of weather-based problems, huh? But it's one
Yeah.
of those things where I have to take into account everything that's going on and really just focus in, lock in.
Yeah. Have you ever done anything such as acting stuff or anything in Wisconsin before?
I haven't. No, I've always wanted to go to Wisconsin. I'm a Packers fan. I don't know if you can see behind me, but Green
Oh
Bay
yeah,
is
I see that.
yeah. It's I've always wanted to go. I got to get down there, go see a game, bring my dad out.
Yeah. What has been your favorite thing to do after all your scenes that you do and they're cut?
Do you mean like naturally? What do I do after we finish shooting?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry. Yep.
Would you say you're trying to ask that of when the whole project is done, or just when the cameras finish rolling and I go back to the trailer or go back to the dressing room or go back to the hotel or whatever?
That one, yep. When you
Okay.
get done shooting that one part.
So when the shots are done, one thing that was definitely almost habitual. It was just something that happened every day, every time. Me and my dad would always go to catering. My dad's the stage parent, and he's done everything with me in terms of where we go and what we do in terms of acting. So one thing that we definitely share is we're both foodies, and we love going and seeing Crafty and seeing what they have to offer us. And we like joking about, like, oh, the last Crafty guys didn't have this, or hopefully the next Crafty guys have this, and blah blah blah. Just making jokes like that. We've always had a nice bond about food, and so to have that, it was definitely habitual to just go straight to Crafty afterwards, go get a snack.
Yeah. Has there been any time you have accidentally broken out of your acting characters?
Yeah, 100%. So when you're filming, it's easy to break character and give a little chuckle out. One time frame of my career that was definitely, it happened quite a bit, was when we were shooting Kevin Can Wait. That show was funny, and some of the stuff that they were trying to improvise and the lines that they were throwing out there and changing, there was just some funny stuff. I don't know how many bloopers are out there on YouTube, but I will say that show was definitely really fun to be a part of. It was hard to not laugh on some takes.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever times you ever gotten embarrassed due to a mistake or something?
Yes, 100%. Countless times you forget a line. That's something that happens to every actor where, you know, if you're shooting something and you have to memorize a script, it's not easy. I will
Mm-hmm.
never shortchange the actors out there that have to memorize script after script after script after script. It's something that I can understand as somebody who's had to do it. Is not easy whatsoever. I've been lucky enough to have a fairly good memorization skill. My memory is good, and when it comes to remembering lines, it's something that's very easy for me. So if I'm put in front of a 3-page, 4-page script, I can have it done in 20 minutes and go to an audition for it. So at the end of the day, I'm blessed to have that in comparison to some other people who are worse off and have to spend a lot of time really just working and working and working to get that down. And the admiration that I have for that is through this roof, because it really is not something that's easy. It's not an easy job, task.
Yeah. If you got the choice to work with any actor in the world and you got this choice, you got asked, who would you want to work with? You got to pick, who would you pick?
And this is all time, or would it
Yes.
be right now?
Well, right now, I guess.
Right now, I want to say that's probably the most difficult question you've asked me today, because as somebody that does really enjoy, indulging in entertainment, watching and listening to, I'm a big music fan. So media nowadays, there's so many people out there. There's so many people that have big names and a big fan base, have different stuff about them that you want to love and you want to be a part of. So and as a comedian as well, there are people like Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura that are funny as hell, but they don't really have much TV, cable, movies that they got going on, and you know,
Yeah.
other big name comedians. I'm big on comedy, so I really do like them comedians and what they could put out. Dave Chappelle is hilarious, and all the SNL guys, they're really funny. So it's one of those things where if I did have the opportunity, it probably would be a comedian, but it's so hard because there's so many good ones. I'll throw a couple names at you. I will say Ryan Reynolds is somebody that I've always wanted to work with.
Yeah.
100%. But Bert Kreischer is absolutely hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Um, as of recently, I have been really liking Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino. Their podcast is really funny.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I'd say Bert Kreischer. Um, Ryan Reynolds is hilarious. He'll always be up there. But yeah, as for recent, more bigger names now that I could throw out there, those are probably a few.
Yeah. Just thinking about it, I feel like you do a good movie or show with Larry the Cable Guy, like a comedian show.
That would be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really nice to think about how the writer's strike is now ending, and there's a lot of stuff that could be, happening. Everything's changing. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. What are 4 words you would describe your acting characters and all?
4 words for every character I've ever done put together.
Yeah, if you could put them all together and
I kind of see what you're saying. I'll say, all in all, funny. And comedy is something that I've always strived for. Um,
yeah,
Physical, I'm definitely more. If we are thinking about comedy, physical comedy is a big part of that. Um, Passionate, I like, big emotion, drama or comedy, even action, anything like that, but passion behind it. I want, a dynamic character. So passion for sure.
yeah,
And I think honestly, dynamic is a perfect word to end it on. Dynamic, something that's
yeah.
changing. I don't really like playing characters that are finite, that never change, that only have one side to them. I like having more meat for the character.
Mm-hmm. Out of all the characters you've got to play, which one would you put as your favorite character that you got to do?
I think I think PD might have been my favorite because of the different things that I was able to do. I think it's either that or Jack Gable. TV shows, sitcoms in general, it's goofy. It's goofy humor and it's goofy situations, goofy scenarios. So to run back all of the times that I was in a goofy Halloween costume, or we were doing some scene on location in some weird place, it's just really nice to think about those memories. And I have to say that those are a couple of great characters for sure.
Yeah, definitely. If you are upset during or before a scene is getting shot or anything, what do you do to help yourself calm down?
Well, as I said, my dad is the stage parent, so I would always have him there with me. And if anything was wrong, he knew exactly what to do to calm me down. And it was either, you know, a quick conversation. He's great with his words, or he would make me laugh. Comedy has always been something that is long-standing in our family. So, he would make me laugh, bring me to bring me to Crafty, get me some food, anything like that. But he always took care of me, which I needed for sure.
Mm-hmm. If you could do an acting scene or whole show in anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Anywhere in the world. Wow, that's a good question. I think maybe, if I'm really thinking about it, something on location in like Hawaii or like any tropics, any like we wouldn't even got to stay in the states. Um, but yeah, realistically, any tropics. Just thinking about the setting of shooting and that type of experience, but also meanwhile having the luxury of the area that you're in would just bring everything really together. And you know, one thing, sorry, one thing that is definitely important to take into consideration is how happy your actors are. You know,
Mm-hmm.
everybody that does acting is able to put on a face in some way or another, because that's all acting is. You know, it's putting on a face, being somebody else. And you know, when they're behind closed doors, they're different people. They're their own people. They're who they are. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
understand that they want their own stuff. That everybody has their own desires, their own needs. And so when it comes to me as a person, if I were to want to go to the Bahamas or want to go to Hawaii or wherever, there could be Johnny over there that wants to go to, you know, Antarctica and he wants to be in the cold. So and everybody's different. And one thing that you have to take into consideration is keeping your actors happy for, you know, good work. You know, that goes for all work everywhere. If you could work at a food store, you could work, you know, retail, you could work at anything, anything. You work at a bowling alley, anything. You just
Yeah.
want to make sure that what you're doing, your customers, sorry, your employees, the people that are working there are happy. And then everything's smooth, right? You know what I mean? Like if you're going to buy
Yep.
groceries, you want everybody that's around you to be in a good mood. You don't want to be, you know, feeling. It just makes everything harder. So, you know, that follows suit with this industry, and that you know when everybody's happy, everything goes smoother, and everything is really good. Projects are really good. The happiest people when they're working together make the best stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm. What would you say has been the best fan art you've received, if you've received any?
I don't think I have received any fan art. I'll be honest. I don't. Nobody's ever drawn anything from me. You know.
Yeah. Getting back into the wrestling thing, one
Right.
quick question about that. Do you have do you still have the the mask and the cloak and the stuff you wore for that?
I have the mask. I do. I don't have the cloak anymore, but I do have the mask.
Yeah. What is one unforgettable moment, like the top unforgettable moment of your acting career?
Mm, that's that's hard. I think I think the first time meeting Kevin James because just of how much I looked up to him at that time, at that age, I really, you know, he was just that guy. And to realize that I was going to be part of that, you know, universe just was insane to me. And I think getting those calls and finding that out had to have been the best feeling of my career so far to this date.
Yeah. If you could go back and revisit any year of your acting career, what year would that be?
Hmm. I think either 2016 or 2017.
Yeah.
I think those are two really good years.
Hmm. If you came with a warning label for acting and also wrestling as Little Johnny, What persona or what warning labels, sorry, would you have?
Um, I, my mind just went somewhere, but I might be misunderstanding your question. Is that's a WWE thing?
Well, a warning label like is something like a logo for yourself, like how a
Hmm.
place has a logo, so it'd be like a catchphrase or like
I
a
see. I
nickname,
see.
a nickname
Oh.
basically.
Hmm. Maybe something like "Back for the World," "Back to Take the World," because with little Johnny and Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt brothers, he's got the whole world in his hands. I think that would be something that would really tie in later on.
Yeah, that would be good. What are some things you are still striving to achieve in acting that you have not achieved yet?
Well, the big one is an Oscar. That's always going to be one.
Oh, yeah.
But I've always wanted to do some pretty cool stunts, do my own stunts. I haven't really had the chance to do any stunts yet for acting. Um, Traveling out of North America, I think, is probably number one because I've left the country once, but I've been in the continent since I'm born. I've never left the continent. So if I were to be able to go overseas or something like that, I think that'd be number one.
Hmm. If you could come up with your own quote, what would that be?
Everything takes time, even patience.
Yeah, that's good. If you could have a manager for like a show or like a best friend in a show, who would you have?
Hmm. That's good. I think I would have to. I'll say this. I've always wondered how this would turn out. And this is just out of curiosity, because this honestly, I don't think I could give you any name of somebody recently or relevant in my life, but I've always wondered how this could have ever turned out. I shot a commercial for Amazon a while ago, and it never really aired. It aired for like a month because it was when there was another product that came out that did better than it, so they just took it off the air. But the commercial, the audition process was 500 boys versus 500, or sorry, I misspoke. 500 boys going against each other, and then 500 girls going against each other. So they needed one boy and one girl. Now they ended up with two boys and two girls, and they sent the four of us off to a hotel for a few days to get to know each other, get chemistry down, and then we went back and they did screen tests and then figured out who would be the best match for who. The two boys were me and his name's Miles Brown. There's a show called Blackish, where he played
Hmm.
all the sons. And great kid, great actor, great dancer. When I met him, he had been doing stuff for the NBA, doing like halftime shows, like killer kid, really doing good stuff. Sadly, inevitably, they ended up picking me, and so he wasn't part of the commercials. But I had always wondered, for years to come after that, what that duo would have turned out to be like if we ever worked together, me and Miles. So I think that's probably the best answer that I could give you in terms of any possibility, any alternate timeline. If me and Miles were to ever get together and do something, I think that would be really interesting. Technical difficulties, I think. Well, good.
Hello.
Hey,
I'm really, really sorry about that. My computer died, so now I have to be on my phone. I'm
you're
really
good.
sorry.
Don't worry about it. Some technical difficulties here. It's all good.
All right. So we were on. Did you finish your answer for that?
Do you remember the last thing you heard?
It was where for the Blackish, where the character you couldn't he
Right. So that whole process, the audition process, when it inevitably became me to be the person in the commercial, he couldn't be part of it, and so for me, I was always curious to think what it would be like in an alternate timeline if we had ever worked together or anything like that. So I guess that's the best answer I could give you. Is in any universe, if we were to ever get together and do some work, I think that would be really interesting.
yeah. And so for wrestling again, how did the little Johnny name all come about?
Um, Now I believe little Johnny comes from uh, the little kid being a little John Cena reference, as in he is, a miniature John Cena to scare him. The Wyatt brothers are using against him, and eventually the Wyatt brothers bring me into the family and give me the mask. Um, so I believe it stems from that, from the whole John Cena Johnny.
Okay. Yeah. Was there any background or inspiration off of any of your characters that you played in any of your movies or shows?
For me personally, no. So I will say with confidence, all of the characters that I've played have been written by incredible writers. And to be part of those pieces, I'm so blessed. And, to take credit for the background of the writing of those characters would be, wrong of me. I would never shortchange the work that those writers put in and their incredible characters that they were able to write.
Yeah, for sure. If there was anything you would change about your acting style and yeah, just style, what would that be?
That's a good one. I think I wish I was more comfortable singing. I've never been big on singing or my voice, so there are plenty of stuff. Like I think about like High School Musical, great piece, great film. Went on to do great things, very influential for media and for kids. So I think being part of something like that would be really interesting, and even dipping into theater because of it, possibly. But I've never been big on my voice, my vocal cords. So we'll see. Maybe someday, but it doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon.
Yeah. And what's funny, I was actually thinking a little bit ago in our interview that you'd be good in what is the show called again? Sorry.
High School Musical?
Yes, High School Musical. I feel like you'd do good in that. So
Yeah, I think that would be really fun. My sister loves those movies. I think that would be really fun because I kind of grew up off them with her.
yeah. If for your wrestling persona for little Johnny, if you could dump any type of food and beverage on an actor or a wrestler, what food and beverage would that be?
One big protein shake.
Yeah.
Bulk someone up.
Yep.
A little bit of pre workout in there too.
Yep. Magic power. And what are your hobbies other than acting?
Um, as of recently, I mean, I took a job at a food store, which is just like a easier thing for me to do to just make some like college money because then again, I am in college. I just started my freshman year at community college, so I can stay local and keep doing auditions and stuff. Um, but other than that, I go to the gym a lot. That's a big part of my life. I spend a lot of time in there, and other than that, it's just hanging with my friends. I've been really blessed to have some really nice people around me to spend time with. So, I definitely spend a lot of time with them and my family.
Mm-hmm. Who would you put in your Mount Rushmore of actors?
Ooh, that's a really good one. I'd have to think about that for a second. I don't even think yeah, that would be hard because there's so many good ones, and hmm, I feel like I have to put Kevin James up there
Yeah.
for one of them. Then I think I might put I really liked when I was younger. Will Smith was a big influence for me. Men in Black and Fresh Prince of Bel Air, and you know, a lot of stuff that he's done has been a big influence. And he's hilarious. He's definitely one of the most influential ones for me.
Yeah.
Um, I want to say Robin Williams probably would go up there too.
Mm.
Um, Man, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. Um, ah, I might be a little cliche, but I can't leave her out of this. She's so influential. Betty White is she's so classic and so for the female generation as well too. And you know, rest in peace. But yeah, that's definitely I think a good one to put up there.
Yeah, definitely. Who would you consider as a brother and sister in acting?
Hmm. I will always consider myself part of the Wyatt family for sure, but I think my TV sister, Mary Charles Jones, who played my sister in Kevin Can Wait, um, I think that one will always stick with me. She's definitely my TV sister, as well as Taylor Spritler, who she was older and had different storylines. It was more of me and Mary Charles, and then Taylor and her boyfriend in the show, who he was hilarious. But I think those two are definitely my TV sisters, and all five of the boys that I shot Rockaway with are my TV brothers. They are my brothers for life for sure.
Yeah. When you were growing up, a little bit before acting, when in your beginning career of acting, when you were growing up, were you more of a shy, quiet kid or outgoing, loud, and excited?
I'd have to say I was more outgoing. I definitely kept to myself in the sense of, what I would do, daily life, and how much time I would spend with, friends from school. I didn't go on many play dates, and I didn't do this or that. But at school, I was definitely very outgoing, and with people, just people in everyday life, I was a mature, younger kid, so I was definitely able to grasp more heavy concepts at a younger age, like being socially um, aware and stuff like that.
Yeah. What is one thing you would tell your fans, either from acting, wrestling, any anything?
Um, I'll say this: as much as it'll sound like a cliche to you, follow your dream because this type of thing doesn't happen to anybody. It happens to the people that want it to happen. And when you really, really, really want something like this, or to be part of WWE or to be part of anything, you work for it. It takes time. Everything takes time, and I think that's something that you should definitely keep in mind is that you can make it happen. Just don't have so much pressure on yourself. I'm 18 years old. I was blessed to be thrown into the life that I was at the age that I was at, and I still have so much life ahead of me to see what might happen. So don't put so much pressure on yourself. Enjoy yourself, really. Brian Cranston. I saw an interview with Brian Cranston recently, who it was just incredible. Something that he said that really was eye opening to me, and that kids nowadays put so much pressure on themselves. 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds, we're all looking at them saying, "What are you doing? What are you planning on doing for college? What are you doing here? What are you doing there?" When a lot of them should just be able to look in the mirror and say they're comfortable with who they are and that they can move forward past high school, take a year, take 2 years, learn, travel, just learn about yourself, grow into yourself. There's kids that are spending their first couple of adult years, still working, still doing school, and not learning about themselves, not traveling, not learning about anything in this world, and that's a problem. That creates worker bees that just mindlessly do, and they don't enjoy life. And, enjoying life is enjoying the time that passes by, finding a way to do that. And if you're not able to do that, I don't really know what you're doing.
Yeah. And then I got one last question for you. Do you have any advice for me to become an actor? Because you do need acting to become a wrestler. And
That's a good question. So I will say for you at your age, take time and learn more about yourself. It's a very, very, very beautiful thing to be able to learn about yourself and to grow. And at your age, you still have a lot of growing to do. And it's not an insult. It's not me saying you're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. My dad's not perfect. Nobody's perfect. You have to understand that we all go through this process of growing and learning about ourselves, learning about what we want to do with our lives, where we want to be, and you as yourself who wants to be an actor, wants to get into WWE, you're gonna make that happen. But you have to learn about yourself first. You have to be comfortable in your own shoes. Be comfortable with your voice, be comfortable with your mind, everything. And so one thing that I will say for you, this piece of advice that I need you to take is don't put pressure on yourself. Don't. You'll get there. It's a matter of time, it's not a matter of tomorrow. You know what I mean?
hmm
Take it day by day, man.
yeah,
And you're doing great too. You have great interview questions. You got a good interview style.
thank you. And I thank you very much for taking your time out to do this. It
Well,
was,
thank you, man. Thank you. Seriously.
yeah. And I'm sorry about that, where my Chrome
Oh, don't
here.
worry about it. No worries. Yeah, we all got stuff happening. It's all good.
Yeah. So, thank you again for taking your time out and doing this, and I hope you have a good rest of your night.
Thank you, brother. You have a great one too. This was awesome.
Yep.
Have a good one.